The moment a cop walks up to your window and says, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Most drivers fall directly into a trap. And here is what happens. You answer. Maybe you say, "I think I was going a little fast." Maybe you say, "Was it my taillight?" And within seconds, you have just handed the officer evidence he may not have even had. He pulled you over for a broken taillight, and you just confessed to speeding. That is not small talk. That is a scripted interrogation move that officers are specifically trained to deploy the moment they approach your vehicle. This is tactical education only. For specific legal guidance, consult a licensed attorney in your jurisdiction. Through tactical analysis of hundreds of recorded traffic stop encounters, I have identified 7 specific tricks that officers use over and over again to get drivers talking, consenting, and incriminating themselves before they realize what is happening. I have examined body cam recordings and broken down exactly what cops are trained to do and why it works so effectively. I am going to show you all 7 of these tricks today, and more importantly, the exact counter moves, word for word, that shut each one down. 7 tricks, 7 counters. By the end of this, you will be field ready. Stick around because trick number 5 catches even people who think they already know their rights. This is tactical education to help you understand how traffic stops work. For specific legal advice, consult an attorney in your state. Before any counter move, run the first 60 seconds procedure. Signal and pull over to a well-lit location. Engine off, keys on the dashboard. Dome light on if it is dark. Hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel. Lock your doors. Window cracked 2 to 3 inches maximum. State clearly, vehicle is secured. I will pass documents through the window. This controls access, limits plain view exposure, and sets the tactical tone before interrogation begins. Tactic number 1 is the leading question. This is the opener, the move that sets everything else in motion. The officer approaches, and the very first thing out of their mouth is, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Sounds casual, sounds like they are just getting things started. But tactically, this is a fishing expedition. They want you to do their job for them. Here is the real situation. The officer may have pulled you over for a broken taillight. That is all they have. But the moment you say, "I think I was going a little fast," or "Was it the stop sign back there?" you have handed them violations they never clocked. Officers are trained to use your answer to build a larger case. Body cam footage shows the same pattern across thousands of stops. Driver looks flustered. Driver guesses. Officer writes it down. In states like California, officers are required to state the reason for the stop. In Texas and Indiana, they are not. That means their opener question is investigational. Every time. Why does this work? Because it feels like a normal question. Your instinct is to be helpful and look innocent by being forthcoming. That instinct is the weapon they are using against you. Your counter move. "No, officer, I do not know why you pulled me over." Say it calmly, without hesitation. This puts the burden back where it belongs. They must now state the reason. You have committed to nothing, admitted to nothing. You are forcing them to build their case from evidence, not from your mouth. Lock that in and say it 3 times. When adrenaline spikes and that question hits you at night on the side of the road, you need that response automatic. Tactical summary. Never guess, never explain, never admit. No officer puts the burden on them every single time. Now you have shut down their opening move. But here is what body cam analysis shows happens next. The moment you do not take their bait on the first question, officers pivot immediately to their second trap. This one is smoother, more casual, and it works even on people who handled tactic number 1 perfectly. It is built around consent, and it is specifically designed to corner you using your own honesty. Tactic number 2 is where the real consent game begins. Tactic number 2 is the 2-step consent setup. This is the most dangerous trick on this list because it weaponizes your own honesty against you. The officer has your documents, and then they lean in and say, "Nothing illegal in the car, right?" And almost every driver says, "No, nothing illegal. I have done nothing wrong." That is the hook. Step 1 complete. Then comes step 2. "Well, then you would not mind if I took a look." And just like that, you are cornered. Here is the real situation. You are in a psychological trap. If you say yes to the search, you have legally waived your Fourth Amendment right. If you say no, it feels like you admitted to lying. That tension is not accidental. Officers are trained to create exactly that feeling, using your instinct to look honest against you. Under the Fourth Amendment, you are never required to prove your innocence by surrendering your privacy. But the two-step setup makes it feel like you are. Here is the live exchange. Officer, anything illegal in there? You. Officer, I am invoking my right to remain silent. Officer, you got nothing to hide, right? You. Officer, I do not consent to a search. Officer, I just want a quick look. Help me help you. You. Officer, I do not consent to a search. You do not argue. You do not explain. You repeat your position calmly and precisely. Your camera plus their body cam creates a memorialized record. They cannot later claim ambiguity. If you do not counter this, you say yes to the search. The officer has full legal authority to go through your vehicle, your console, your bags, your trunk, tearing seats, pulling panels, with no obligation to put anything back. Consent cures almost every procedural issue they would face in court. Tactical summary: you can be both innocent and refuse a search. Those two truths coexist. I do not consent to a search. Clear, calm, and every single time. That counter move handles the consent request directly. But here is what field observation shows happens next. When officers hear a clean refusal, they do not simply accept it. They have a third trap ready that sounds so casual and so small that even people who just successfully refused a full search suddenly agree to it. Tactic number 3 is the move designed to undo the refusal you just made. Tactic number 3 is the quick look lie and the fake order. After you have refused consent, officers shift tactics. Instead of a formal search request, it now sounds like this. Hey, just a quick peek. 2 seconds, I will have you on your way. Or they escalate. I'm going to check your car now. Step aside. No question, no request, just authority. Here is the real situation. Both moves extract consent without technically asking for it. The quick look framing makes it seem so minor that refusing appears paranoid. But a quick look is a search. Full stop. Once you agree, the officer has legal consent to search the entire vehicle. There is no just the back seat limitation once you say yes. And the fake order is designed to make you believe compliance is mandatory when it is not. Officers are trained to phrase declarations, not questions, specifically to harvest a passive nod or a silent step aside as consent. The escalation path. Driver successfully refuses the two-step setup. Officer steps back, gets friendly. Just a quick look in the back seat, 2 seconds. Driver thinks this is a smaller ask and says, okay. Officer writes in the report, driver consented to search a vehicle. That one small concession undid everything. Your counter move for the quick look. Officer, I do not consent to any searches, including a quick look, for the fake order. Officer, are you asking for my permission, or is this a lawful order? Because I do not consent. That question forces the officer to commit. If it is a request, your refusal stands. If it is a lawful order, comply while stating, I am complying under your order. I do not consent, and I am protesting this action. Tactical summary. A quick look is a search. A fake order is still a request. Name it, refuse it, document it every time. You have neutralized 3 consent traps in a row. But here is what analysis of extended stops reveals. Once officers realize you know your rights around searches, they shift to a completely different playbook. They stop asking about your car and start asking about you. The next trap is built entirely on conversation, and it does not feel like interrogation at all. It feels like small talk. That is precisely the danger of tactic number 4. Tactic number 4 is the small talk investigation. This happens in the minutes between the officer getting your documents and returning with them. They lean on your door and say, where are you headed tonight? Where are you coming from? None of this is casual. All of it is tactical. Here is the real situation. Officers use small talk to accomplish 3 objectives. First, to look for signs of impairment, slurred speech, bloodshot eyes, smell of alcohol. Second, to establish a behavioral baseline so they can later claim something shifted and gave them reasonable suspicion. Third, to get you to volunteer information that creates probable cause. The moment you say, I was just at a bar with some friends, that goes in the report as the basis for a DUI inquiry. The moment you say, I am in a hurry, that builds a narrative of evasiveness. Live exchange. Officer says, "So where are you coming from tonight?" You say, "Officer, I prefer not to answer questions beyond providing my documents." Officer says, "Come on, just making conversation." You say, "I am exercising my right to remain silent." Officer says, "You seem nervous. Something going on?" You say, "I am invoking my right to remain silent." Flat, measured, professional. State-specific note. In stop and identify states like Texas, Nevada, and Utah, you must provide your name and ID when lawfully detained. In all states, your required documents are license, registration, and proof of insurance. That is the full legal list. Cameras are critical here. Announce recording calmly. For everyone's safety, I am recording this interaction as well. That single line changes the encounter dynamics. Tactical summary. Cooperation is not conversation. Providing documents is your legal requirement. Everything beyond that is optional. Stay silent and stay tactical. You have handled the small talk trap. Now the officer is back at their vehicle, and most people think the stop is almost done. But this is exactly when the most psychologically brutal tactic deploys. At the moment when you have done everything right and your guard starts to drop. Tactic number 5 is the warrant bluff. You have refused consent. You have stayed silent. The officer has finished the stated reason for the stop. And then, "If you will not let me look, I will just get a warrant. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. You will be here all day." This is pure psychological warfare designed to make you fold after you have already done everything correctly. Here is the real situation. For that officer to obtain a search warrant, they need 3 things. Actual probable cause, time to prepare, and submit an affidavit, and a judge willing to sign it. If they already had probable cause strong enough for a warrant, they would not be asking for your consent. They would be forcing you out and searching already. The warrant threat is almost always a bluff. They are betting you do not understand how the process actually works. Your counter move. "Officer, I do not consent to a search. If you have probable cause for a warrant, I am happy to wait for you to obtain one." Say that with total calm. You just called their bluff without arguing, without escalating, without showing any emotion. Say it again. "Officer, I do not consent. If you have probable cause, I am happy to wait for a warrant." Under Rodriguez versus United States, the 2015 Supreme Court decision, officers cannot extend a traffic stop beyond the time needed to complete its original purpose without independent, reasonable suspicion. Once they hand you that ticket, their authority for that stop is over. Your weapon. Am I free to leave? Officer, ask it after they hand you your documents. Ask it every 30 minutes if they attempt to hold you. You are building a constitutional record on camera. Tactical summary. The warrant bluff is a test of composure. Pass the test. I do not consent. I am happy to wait for a warrant. Call every single bluff. You just blocked the warrant bluff. If the officer had real probable cause, this is where things escalate. But if they did not, here is the next move. And it is the most patience-draining tactic on this entire list because it is designed to wear you down through time itself. Tactic number 6 is built not on words, but on waiting. Tactic number 6 is the drug dog delay. I need you to stay here while I call in a K-9 unit. The goal is simple. Make the wait so long that you voluntarily consent just to end it. You have a job to get back to. You have somewhere to be. The longer you sit on that roadside, the more the pressure builds to just say yes and get out of there. Here is the real situation. Rodriguez versus United States established that police cannot extend a traffic stop beyond its original scope without independent, reasonable suspicion of a separate crime. If they pulled you over for speeding, the stop ends when that matter is handled. Holding you for an hour waiting for a drug dog just because you refused consent is an unconstitutional seizure. Florida versus Harris established that even an unreliable dog alert can constitute probable cause, but not during an illegally extended stop. Why does this tactic work? Because most people do not know the Rodriguez ruling. They believe the officer can hold them as long as they want. After 45 minutes on a roadside with traffic rushing past, even people who know their rights start to crack. Live exchange. Officer says, I am holding you for K-9. You say, Officer, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Officer says, you are being detained. You say calmly, Officer, what is the independent reasonable suspicion for extending this stop beyond the original traffic matter? Let that sit on the body cam. Then every 30 minutes, am I free to leave? You're recording documents every minute of that detention. Combined with their body cam, it builds the timeline an attorney needs to challenge the constitutionality of the extension. That footage is your tactical evidence. Tactical summary. Under Rodriguez, they cannot run the clock without independent justification. Ask if you are free to leave. Document every minute. Make them justify every second. 6 tactics down, 1 to go. And this final tactic catches drivers completely off guard because it does not come in the form of a question or legal process. It comes as an attitude, and it is specifically designed to provoke a reaction that hands the officer everything they need. Tactic number 7 is the one that ends stops badly for people who handled everything else correctly. Tactic number 7 is the attitude bait, an officer safety escalation. The officer approaches with a sharp, dismissive, or aggressive tone. They speak impatiently. They are condescending or rude. They are specifically betting you will respond with frustration because the moment you do, they have their justification. Here is the real situation. Under Pennsylvania versus Mims, the 1977 Supreme Court ruling, an officer can order you out of your vehicle based on officer safety concerns. Courts have given officers extraordinary latitude when those 2 words appear in a report. The moment an officer credibly claims your behavior made them feel unsafe, they can remove you from the vehicle, conduct a pat-down for weapons, and launch a much more invasive investigation. Officer training teaches that if you raise your voice, gesture aggressively, or respond with visible anger, that gets documented as the foundation for the officer safety claim. The attitude bait works because we are human. Disrespect triggers a defensive response. Your emotions want to push back, and that emotional response is the weapon they are using. The escalation path.
Officer is rude. You raise your voice slightly. Officer says, your behavior is making me feel unsafe. Step out of the vehicle, and the stop that started as a broken taillight has become a full roadside encounter.
Live exchange. Officer says sharply, license and registration now. You say calmly, yes, officer, I am reaching into the glove box for my registration. Officer snaps, why is this taking so long? You say, I am being careful with my movements, officer. Officer says, you have a problem? You say, no, officer, no problem. Absolute neutrality, flat tone, measured words, nothing a body cam could capture as attitude. Stay calm, stay tactical, stay in control. The tactical comparison, the wrong move, is responding with, I am not doing anything wrong. Why are you talking to me like that? The counter move is calm, full compliance with every lawful command, and silence beyond that. Be polite, not talkative. Cooperation is not conversation. Your composure is your counter move. Your composure is your counter move. Tactical summary. Stay calm, stay tactical, stay in control. Composure is your greatest tactical asset when an officer tries to escalate. Here is the field rule that covers all 7 tactics. Officers are trained to use your words, your emotions, and your cooperation against you. Your counter strategy: provide what is legally required. Stay silent beyond that. Refuse all searches clearly and consistently, and document everything. Control what comes out of your mouth, and you control the encounter. The 4 counter moves you must have memorized before your next drive. 1. Am I free to leave? Forces the officer to commit to your detention status and sets the legal clock at every stage. 2. I am invoking my right to remain silent. Legally ends questioning. Silence alone is not enough in many states. You must say the words explicitly. 3. I want to speak with an attorney. The nuclear option that terminates all questioning immediately. Deploy it before arrest, every time. 4. I do not consent to searches. Clear, unambiguous, no hedging. Say it the same way every time so there is zero ambiguity on any recording. Right now, say these 4 out loud 3 times each. Am I free to leave? I am invoking my right to remain silent. I want to speak with an attorney. I do not consent to searches. Screenshot those 4 phrases. Keep them accessible. Practice until they are automatic, because when that moment comes, you will not have time to think. You will only have time to respond. And if those responses are drilled in, you will respond correctly. This is tactical education only, not legal advice. Always consult with a qualified attorney in your state for your specific situation. Before you face your next traffic stop, there is more tactical intelligence you need to be field ready. I have documented counter moves for scenarios we did not cover here. What happens after the stop? What happens when officers come to your door? And what happens when they claim they already have everything they need? That next critical training is showing on screen right now. Watch it now while this is fresh. Tell me in the comments, where in the world are you and what time is it there? They have a playbook. Now you have the counter moves. Know the tactics. Own the encounter.